Hi, everybody. Today is Wednesday, April the 15th, 2020, and we are here for Rudy's Psychic Meetup. And Rudy's got a great lineup tonight.
First on the list, we're going to cover some of Sylvia Brown's predictions. She has a pretty big list. So I figure the next couple meetups, Sam, that was a good suggestion. We'll probably just kind of go through and read through her predictions and get your take on them. We're going to talk about kind of a lot of the physical experiences that people are getting with these psychic sensations. We've covered various ones here and there in different meetups, but I thought it would be good to kind of put them all on a list and we'll talk about them all at once because we have some new people and it sounds like some of you new people are paying attention and starting to notice things. So that's really cool. And then we're going to go over some mysteries of the Bible. Raymond had some good suggestions. We're going to cover a couple things from the Bible and get your thoughts on those too. All right. So the first one I wanted to talk about Sylvia Brown. A lot of people know who she is. I think I may have heard of her, but I wasn't quite sure who she was. So I looked her up and Daniel L. posted this back in February, and Raymond made a suggestion that we take a look at some of these predictions to get your take on it. But Sylvia Brown was, I guess, basically a world-renowned psychic medium, spiritual teacher, author, lecturer. She did all kinds of stuff. She grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, born in 1936, died in November 2013, but lived in California, did a lot of TV shows. So she was on Montel Williams, Larry King. So I think a lot of people that have been around might know her from that stuff. But she kind of had a philosophy of life based upon all her readings that she done and the regressions and the hypnosis and things of that nature. And she kind of in the mid 80s, she founded something called the Society of Novus Spiritus, which is the new spirit. And it's kind of based upon Gnostic Christian teachings where, Mary maybe wasn't a virgin. Jesus might not be exactly the son of God. It's a little bit different take on Christianity that I think appealed to a lot of people. In fact, Lost Shaker mentioned that you were familiar with that. So I thought that was interesting. So Sam, anything else you remember about Sylvia? Did you follow her when you were younger?
I did read at least one of her books because I was just down at my other place on the beach recently and I saw one of her books. There are two of them. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. I remember reading that and the stories that she would tell and everything. And of course, I found it interesting because, being a non-practicing medium, you like to get some insight on what it's like to be a medium. And just to comment on what they say about her in Wikipedia, I guess she was charged with fraud and criminally convicted. What was it, in 1992?
Something like that. I didn't go into detail on what she was, but it's funny how Wikipedia throws the negative in there. Like they focus on some of the things she got wrong. They say she was discredited, but obviously you're never going to be 100%, right? When you're
no. I mean, but the thing is that that when I'm wrong, like it was my mistake, like I misunderstood whatever it was that I was reading. It happens during readings too, but usually because I have the other person to talk to about it. Like one guy, I thought he had a whole bunch of silver because that's what I saw around him, but he was thinking about getting some, like a lot that day. So I was wrong on what my impression was looking at him and seeing this. Oh my God, I just saw like so much silver around him. I was like, oh my, what is going on here? And I just said to him that, and then, so my mistake though, because there was a reference to silver. It's just and there was a lot of things during the reading where he said to me, it's like you're reading my mind, so it's a lot of times it's my impression. I make the mistake. So anybody looking for a medium that's 100%, I mean, you're going to be looking a really long time because I don't know of one. I think that there's a lot of people who are psychics who hold themselves out as mediums or maybe believe that they are because if you aren't one, how do you know for sure you're not one? If if you think your psychic experiences are mediumistic and people have made you feel like you're a medium, and so that can happen as well, I think. And another thing that people have to remember is that just because someone's a medium, that doesn't mean that they're a good person. Like they can be just as bad as the next person, just like anybody, because someone's an accountant doesn't mean they're honest, or a lawyer, that doesn't mean they're honest. Just because they're a doctor, that doesn't mean they're any good at practicing medicine. just because they hold the title, so people have to remember that as well, is that, mediums are humans who have superhuman abilities, but that does not affect whether they're a good person or a bad person, So I want people to keep that in mind when they're out there in the world of mediums. Because somebody asked me that one time. They said, well, I thought you said she was a real medium. And I'm like, yeah, and she is. But just because you're a real medium, it doesn't mean that you're a good person. I mean,
And you can get corrupted along the way, right? That's happened. I've heard other stories of that happening with mediums where they were great, and then all of a sudden things coming from them, you're like, that may not sound right. A friend was telling me about one over in the UK recently. So,
yeah,
all right,
I
let's
was told about that as well. And I think that what happens there, a guy talked to me about that who worked with a lot of mediums. And he said what happened is they got too focused on the world, right? And they forgot what their job was as a medium. And they get too focused on the stardom and the money and all of that kind of stuff. So their gifts stop working so well for them. Some people fall into drug and alcohol abuse. And just because you're a medium, that doesn't mean that you can't suffer poor health or mental illness as well. Because remember, you're still in a human body, right? This here is the vessel that the gift flows through. And, you can have problems just like anyone else. And I'm very thankful that I've had a very good life. I've had a lot of opportunities to learn. So that's why I don't have any problem doing this. This is very easy for me because it was brilliant how the people on the other side set out to train me for literally 30 years so that this could be a success in the short window of time that we have, because you can see now things are starting to speed up. Things are moving quicker. I'm getting excited because, gold, silver, cryptos, everything all at once. But let's get into Sylvia Brown and her
all right.
questions.
So I went from the list. We'll cover just the first 10 and go down and get your quick take on these. So her prediction, number 1, eradication of cancer as we know it using sound waves, photosensitive drug therapy, and self-addicting cells.
So, as most people here who've been hanging out with me for a while, you know that I do predict a cure for cancer. And since that time, they have announced a few discoveries that may lead to a cure for most types of cancer. I believe the Israelis have discovered something, or it was in the UK. It was discovered by accident. I was like, oh, just like sticky notes. And so I know we have that in the hits channel. So on the Discord channel, you can scroll and get to the hits section where somebody posted that after I had predicted that.
Okay.
It's true. So I don't know so much about the details about how cancer is going to be cured. So I can't comment on the things that she's using as examples.
Okay. But yeah, and you mentioned other than really late, unless you catch it really, at the very end, stage 4, you might not have such a good chance. But okay.
Yes.
All right. The second one, I think this one's already come true to some degree. Robotic houses controlled by computerized switchboards, and this was obviously made back in the 80s or 90s, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that she is talking about, the majority of homes having that. And I can't say that I see that coming across the board. And it's just because, especially in older parts of the world, homes would have to be retrofitted with it, etc. There's a higher chance of it breaking down. Who's going to fix it? Manpower is becoming an issue in a society where there's more people collecting pensions than there are people working. So they have to think ahead about these things like that. So I don't see it being a common across the board. Everyone has it, just like everyone has a washroom in their house now. It's not going to be like that, but it'll be more common in the higher end constructions, just like intercom systems, for example.
Yeah. Okay. And Alexa controlling your lights and all that other fun stuff. A lot of, yeah. All right. The third one is electric cars with flotation ability for water travel to bypass freeways.
No.
Yeah, that seems like it would be a nightmare to manage water traffic. There's plenty of boats out there.
Yeah.
Um, the next one, house is made from pressed paper with plastic coatings and interchangeable walls.
Yes. Well, I think that's already come true.
Yeah, there's a video about it. I don't know if it's a Scandinavian company. They use cardboard and they make the houses and modules. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. So she was right on that one. And I had that picture as soon as you were talking about it. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's happened.
Yeah,
Not that I could give you a specific example. I'm just the people on the other side are like, that's already being done. So
yeah.
I'm going to go with what they said. And you confirm that it's a
It's
Scandinavian.
on the YouTube somewhere. Search for cardboard house. You'll see it.
Okay.
The fifth one is separate body parts cloned for organ transplants, but not an entire body.
Yes, that'll happen for things like lungs, kidneys,
Okay.
spleen.
I know there's already those weird stories of them growing ears on the
Yeah,
backs of mice and things like that. So okay.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, this is good. It's number 6, a new form of painless tooth extraction using a type of suction with immediate replacement of new tooth.
No, I don't think we're going to get that, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Vacuum cleaner in your mouth. um, all right, the next one is a diagnostic chambers, which map the body's electrical balance to predict health problems before they come.
Yeah, I see something similar to that coming out where you can get like a body scan and then it'll run it through like this computer and give a list of potential things based on all the measurements and things that are going on in your body, your potential for
Yeah,
something.
I don't have the details, Sam, but I know my wife has talked about it. A lady she knows that works at the university in Tucson. NASA astronauts use something like this, where they hook yourself up and they figure out what's going on. The astronauts seem to have a lot of the good technology that they don't really. They might not publish it as being effective, but I believe something like that is in use right now on a small basis. Number 8, cylindrical rooms in which people enter to see an automated projection of the clothing and color that will look good on them. Select what you want, take your measurements, then 2 days later, pick up the goods.
I can see them having something like a mirror that you would just walk in front of, and then the clothing
Yeah.
would be shown on the mirror. You just have to stand in a certain pose, right? And you put in your measurements and stuff like that. And then you just buy it on your way out.
Yeah. And there's I think an app called eTailor that will take your measurements by just with your smartphone. So yeah, that would be smart for them to be able to measure you all in one shot.
Yeah. Yeah. Suji says that they have that now. So
Okay.
again, something that I have never seen before, but I just had a little story shown to me that.
Biomeridian testing. Okay, it measures your energy meridian. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Number 9 is third floor of houses have rollback roofs to allow hovercrafts to come and go. Well, the hovercrafts can make it to the third floor.
I was just gonna say, yeah, like I don't think that she means that. I think she's talking about the flying cars, right?
Yeah, I wonder some sort of anti-gravity type thing. Maybe she calls them hovercrafts, but they're more anti-grav.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna say no to that. That
Okay.
will be again a selective household thing, not something that is going to be in everyone's household.
All right, and then the number 10 for tonight: no more surgery with knives. Some type of molecular ionization device that knows how to take out the afflicted cells, then seal the wound without a single scar.
Well, I think that they're going to be doing a lot more stuff through like sound waves through the skin. So, for example, destroying kidney stones,
Hmm.
instead of either letting them pass or cutting someone open and taking them out, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it'll be stuff like that, but you're never actually going to 100% get rid of knife surgery. I think that was just wishful thinking.
Yeah, that would be interesting with the sound because I know they already do it with like radiation. They'll use like kind of a dome or cone structure that'll pinpoint the radiation to a certain point. So it'd be interesting to do that with sound
Yeah.
as well. All right, we'll go quickly. We're 20 after, so let's talk about tingles, chills, hot potato hands, and other physical psychic experiences that people may be encountering. So it's been fun to read through the Discord, especially if some of you new folks that are out there that are starting to pay attention and notice these potential psychic abilities. And so, for everyone's benefit, I want to just kind of go over what we've covered in past meetings. And it's all about, we've talked about this many times, but paying attention to the small things. And even when you notice something, stopping in the moment and thinking about it will help you recognize it as it goes on further. Because in the last year, I've noticed a tremendous increase. So, the first one, warm or hot hands, typically experienced with with the intention of healing. Several people have done this during barefoot docs, healing circles. Sam, you've got that as well. Is there any other sensations you've gotten with when your hands heat up, or is it mainly with the healing?
I get a certain sensation throughout my entire body that's very similar to what can start happening when I'm doing a reading or doing one of these meetups.
Okay. Yeah, and I know a few others, not as well as I. When I'm in those healing sessions, I'll feel like waves, like you're floating in the surf, and the waves kind of move through you. And a few other folks have mentioned that as well. So I don't get the hot hands, but I get something different, and then kind of a connection that way. So yeah, if you get something during those, pay attention. Everybody connects in different ways. The next one is orbs. So Amran Hussein reported seeing orbs, kind of in his peripheral vision. And when he first mentioned this, my thought was, if you ever like rub your eyes or cough really hard, you'll see those sparkles, and that's more with blood pressure. But orbs are actually something that I guess some people can see if you have them around you. So Sam, what was your advice to Armand? Is stop and think about who it might be, or see who you think about.
Yeah, like usually you'll get a picture in your mind, or you'll kind of it's just a knowing, because there might be like 30 relatives, older relatives that you knew of or knew personally, because you don't have to have known them personally. They can still be part of your tribe and have not met you. There's a lot of people who have never like met their grandfather, or only met them when they were really little. So they didn't really, that one time when they were like 3 or 4. One lady, I think she said that she hadn't seen her grandmother since she was 6 years old. And I mean, she was like in her 40s, right? So, normally you try to pay attention to who it might be, because there's a pretty good chance that orb is somebody from the other side who's crossed over to this realm and is presenting themselves to you. And normally you know that because you're not afraid when you see them.
And that's the key, is not thinking about it, just what pops into your mind first, and paying attention to that, because you can always outthink yourself. Similar thing, ringing in the ears, something that's not tinnitus, but I know I get this occasionally, and other people have talked about it, where you might get a ringing for just a few seconds, either in one or both your ears. Sam, could that be some sort of download, or is someone talking about you? What do you think the ringing is when that tends to happen?
Well, when you're sort of getting into the zone, it's not really conducive to your physical body.
Okay.
Right? That's the thing about being human, is that it doesn't bode well with exercising your gifts. That's why a lot of people who have gifts might have like stomach problems, for example, or different aches and pains. So yeah, that's always something to keep in mind when you're looking at exercising your gifts as well, that you might get some extra issues because of it.
Okay. And the clairaudience is more of a medium ability, right? And that where you're actually going to hear words. I remember in Anaheim, Baggy mentioned it's almost like a portal opened up, and she heard her friends talking about her, like say her name, something about Baggy. So that's more of that medium ability, as opposed to just maybe a ringing that people, if you're not a medium, you might get that in some way.
Yes, that would be part of like psychic ability coming in. So your body is sort of shifting gears into that higher vibration so you can grab the information from the ethos.
Okay.
Right. And so you need to do that. And it just happens. There's not really anything you can do to bring it on. It just, it's a natural ability. It's like, breathing oxygen. You remember to breathe and then it just happens. But that could be one of the signs that you're going into that and you're going to get some information. And remember the difference, big difference between being psychic and being a psychic medium is the psychic thing is when you are dealing with sort of non-living stuff, like just ideas and things that are not living. Whereas as a medium, you're speaking to living entities on the other side.
Okay. Then the other one we talked about was smells, where you might was it clairolfaction, I believe is the term for it. But some people will get smells. Manna mentioned, I think it was her daughter noticing a smell that was ended up being their grandmother that was around. But so some people might be more inclined to smell something that maybe you're like, that doesn't, flower, some sort of scent that shouldn't be there. Do you ever get the smell? Do you ever just smell things?
I have a long time ago. So it has happened. I'm more of a clairaudient medium. I get more. I get that much more than I would get in other things like smells or tastes. Okay. I get the actual, person talking to me.
And if you weren't a medium, but a loved one maybe was coming by or being around, or family member, you might be more apt to get a smell, even if you're not a medium, right?
Yeah, that's one of the easier things for them to do. Just like how it's easier for them to use like electrical things or electronic things. Mm-hmm. Like that's how they make your phone ring with their phone number. Like maybe you never deleted your dad's number, and then one day you got a call from it. I mean, nobody was on the other end. But guess who did it? Your dad. He got it to ring. It happens. These things happen because they can do stuff like that. It's easier for them to reach you like by a smell, or because I mean, really, how many people are going to seek out the services of a medium? Right. Not very many people. A lot of people don't believe in it. A lot of people are a little bit freaked out. They're just afraid. They don't understand that, the people on the other side, they love us and they're not going to tell us anything, unless knowing about it is going to prevent it or prepare us. Mm-hmm. Or protect us for, when it does happen. For example, protecting yourself. If you knew the pandemic was coming, most people, would have set aside some extra cash, knowing that they would be laid off for, maybe a month and a half and not have any money coming in. So in order to lower their anxieties. So, I mean, if you told somebody, hey, don't do that. Instead, save that money. I don't know what it is, but something's coming that you're really going to need that. I mean, then you look at it and you're like, wow, that really lowered my anxiety a lot because I had a few dollars in the bank. I'm feeling really bad right now for all the people who got blindsided by this, like the young people or older people who are on these pensions and they're barely making it as it is. And maybe they had a little side job somewhere that they got laid off from because that's what, got them over the hump. So I'm very confident that this is going to end very soon and things are going to get back to normal. So at least those folks will not be in such terror anymore.
And then the other, you don't have to be psychic really to notice these. You just have to pay attention. But we've mentioned where, objects out of place, or, one of the members, her husband leaves feathers around the house. People have reported seeing dimes show up. So there are little things, if you pay attention, where loved ones might be just trying to give you a nudge that you don't necessarily need to be psychic. And then the last one, and I tried to find it back in Discord, but I couldn't find it. But someone mentioned the tingling sensations. And that's something that really I find I get the most is different types of tinglings. But Sam, you've mentioned you get the when spirits move through you to kind of give you confirmation, you get that all over body tingling.
Yeah, I know, especially that I'm giving the right information when they're moving in and out of me.
Okay.
Right. When I'm my knowing, because if I'm guessing something, I'm just like, do you have a sister? Is that sister looking after your mother? And when they're answering like, yes, yes. And then I know what the instruction's going to be. And then I give the instruction, and then the grandmother, like the mother of the woman who's in the nursing home is the one who's passing who's died, but she's passing in and out of me to say, yes, yes, you've got it right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it might be like all over Goosebumps. And yeah, I really noticed that. And now I'm starting to notice over the past year that when I'm paying attention, I will get almost like a crown tingling. I'll kind of move up. And there's certain times when I get the tingling where I'm like, if I'm thinking about a topic, even like when we're on the meetup here and I'm like, oh, I think about it. I'm like, I need to make sure I say that. And I'll get that a lot now. So it's really just from that paying attention. So I'm sure there's other types of tingling that people experience, but yeah. Anything else? Has Baggy or your son ever mentioned any of those types of things?
Well, Baggy gets the same
Oh,
stuff
okay.
that I get, where she's a medium. And I'm assuming my son's a medium, but he has a lot of different experiences that I did not experience by the time I was 9. So it'll be interesting to see how things unfold for him, because the
Okay.
jury's still out on exactly what his role is going to be, like what gifts he has.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully some of you new folks have found that helpful, and some of the old timers, it's a good refresher. One more topic. I think we can get through this pretty quick, Sam. We're here at the bottom of the hour, but I want to thank Raymond for suggesting this. So just to note, if you do have ideas or topics you'd like to cover in the meetup, this is where we explore at the beginning ideas in a little bit more detail. So if you want to do maybe a little bit of research, send me some information. We can try to work it into the agenda instead of trying to put it into a question. So anyway, thanks Raymond for that. He wanted to look at the creation story, the verse from there, the Genesis, that where at the very beginning it describes how the earth was created, specifically the Garden of Eden, and wanted to know your thoughts on these two passages. So Genesis 2, starting with verse 15, the Lord God then took the man and settled him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate and care for it. The Lord gave the man this order: you are free to eat from any tree of the garden except the tree of knowledge of good and evil. From that tree you shall not eat. When you eat from it, you shall die. So Sam, the footnotes in the site that I took it from mentioned, you know, the forbidden tree meaning seems to be that becoming human, like when you become human, you're going to die is just a cause, just because you are human. Is there a deeper meaning to this passage? What are your thoughts, or what can your guide show you about this?
Well, there's some stuff in the Bible that are actually true stories, like historical documents. And then
Mhm.
there's other things that are really just, I call them allegories. So there's stories that will just sort of set an example, or they have like deeper meaning to them. But that doesn't actually mean that, you know, um, a grown man was made
Okay.
and a grown woman was made in this garden where they didn't have to do anything. Like,
Yeah.
boy, I wish that was true. It's not.
Well, that
That's
tree of
not
knowledge,
what happened.
there's always debate on that. Like, what is that tree of knowledge? I mean, I don't know what do they mean by that? What if they able to?
Well, I couldn't really comment on that. I think that there's, biblical scholars who have looked at that from every angle and, have some ideas about what they would actually know about back then when they were
Okay.
doing these writings. Because remember, this is very, very old, because you're reading from the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Like this isn't the New Testament stuff, which is like 2,000 years old. This is Old Testament stuff, which is, what is it, like 6,000 years old?
And translated into English
Yeah,
from.
yeah, absolutely. So, it does have something to do with, becoming aware of your humanity,
Yeah.
with the tree of knowledge, where,
Okay.
aware of death.
Okay.
And,
Um, yeah, I was reading through the Genesis, and I'm like, oh, the Bible is actually pretty interesting. I'm like, I wish I had the time to read through it, but I've not, you only read a couple passages here and there or hear people quote it. But when you start to read it, you're like, oh, this is actually really interesting.
yeah.
Uh, all right, last question, teenage Jesus. So we know about the life of Jesus as a child and an adult, but nothing between the ages of around, 12 to 30. What do you see Jesus doing during those years?
I think he was a normal medium, just like anyone else. He had abilities, he's had healing abilities and stuff, but he
Mhm.
didn't practice any of it in front of anyone, because people would become afraid of someone like him. His mother sat him down when he was really small and just said, you know, there's a few things that went down when you came here. And so they had knowledge about kind of what he was. And, you know, so he learned to keep it low key. And then he, he got up and he did what he was supposed to do. It was his assignment. Like he
Okay.
came down here like to do that because the world was getting a little bit too crazy.
Kind
And
of like starting a crypto psychic channel after you retire, right?
yeah, yeah, when the world's getting a little bit crazy, I think that sometimes people are sent here just to kind of punt humanity into. I mean, look at what Donald Trump is doing. And like I
Yeah.
said, I mean, I don't feel like I'm a special individual or anything. I think I'm just one of 8 people that have a specific assignment that is completely related to, um, the Great Awakening and how we're sort of propelling forward in the Great Awakening. Because, that kind of stuff, a lot of people would think, oh, that's crazy talk. And it wasn't something that I like to get into a whole lot because it's not really conducive to, I'm here to endorse cryptocurrencies and predict the future and, talk about what's going to happen in the world to calm people's anxieties and also get them prepared as well. Because if you're in one of the places that is going to have a front row seat to the shit show, I mean, you really should know about this stuff and be able to get ready so that you can be somebody who has, so you can help other people. Because the more people who know and are prepared, the more who are going to be in a position to help instead of being in the needy position, right? So, I think that Jesus kept his head down and his mouth shut, just like many people who have, had
Well, and even talking about Cynthia Brown, she was practicing for a long time. Maybe you're less likely to be corrupted. There's less chance if you start your mission when you're supposed to instead of doing it your whole life, and you kind of get used to certain things. So not everybody could do that their whole life. So
yeah. And
I'm
I
sure
think
people
that
are
it's a mistake
survived.
to get sucked into Hollywood as well at
Yeah.
that level, yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, Sam. Very interesting. I wouldn't mind looking at some more Bible stuff, Raymond. So we'll take a look at some other interesting verses in the future meetups as well. William Penn writes, curious if anything comes to you about the mystery of Roanoke Colony in Virginia, founded by Sir Walter Raleigh. Over 100 colonists disappeared, and there's much speculation as to what happened to them.
So, I'm wondering if they disappeared over a winter time because I got a thing that they froze to death.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know the story behind the colonists there. I don't know if William's on or not, but interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
that would make sense.
Yeah. If they went to establish somewhere else because where they were at got flooded or something
Okay.
and they had to leave
Okay.
very quickly. But if they all sort of, you know, died trying to find a place to, sort of set things up, um, there's no way
Okay.
that you would have known about it
Yeah.
necessarily.
Lost Saker says that makes sense. Roanoke during the winter. Yeah. Okay. Let's see the next one from Raymond. Hi, Sam. There's a place in LA called the Cannibal Club. Supposedly they have dead children on the menu. I thought this was a sick marketing ploy, but it's private and you have to apply for membership. On their website, it says the meat we serve is selected from the young and healthy, consistent with the practice of cannibalism in many primitive societies. Is this legitimate? How can they get away with this if it's real?
Oh, it's not.
Just a marketing thing.
Yeah, it's just a marketing thing.
All right. Prince Froggy writes, "Hi Sam. Don't know. I don't know if anyone has asked this before. At my job, a few believe the end of the world is near. The predicted rupture, or sorry, we restate that. At my job, if you believe the end of the world is near and the predicted rapture in the Bible is about to happen, do you think this rapture nonsense is true? Yours truly, Prince Froggy."
Yeah, that's what I think it's mainly Pentecostals
Okay.
believe in the rapture. And for those people who are not familiar with that sort of group of Christians, they believe that before all this terrible stuff happens on the earth, as described in the book of Revelation, the good people who believe Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior will be taken up into the sky. like out of their bodies. Like, and they made up things like, oh, if you're a pilot flying a plane, you're going to be taken up in the rapture and the plane's going to crash. And I was like, wow, talk about creating anxiety for an entire planet, all, and I'm like, well, what about the children? Are all the children going to disappear? Is like this what's going to happen? And what's the age cut off? I had a whole bunch of questions. I'm sure the person was like, what?
Yeah.
What's the age cutoff? If all the children, like, is it like if you're under 12? What if you're a young 12?
That's right. Were you born on a leap year? All right. Flynn writes, hi, Sam and Rudy. Prior to the sudden passing of my wife and daughter, I received numerous clues and a vision that I ignored and forgot until it actually happened. The vision is still in the future of a time that I would have significant resources to do great things. Do you see this happening? And can you explain to us where visions and clues of the future or personal events come from and why? Thank you.
I don't really understand because he said that it was previous to it coming true. So are his wife and his daughter still around?
Yeah, that's what I'm not sure. So it sounds like they passed, but he also has maybe it's a separate vision in the future that he's going to have significant resources and do great things. I'm not sure, but
that he had warnings and stuff like that. And this will happen. And it's to prepare you. So a lot of times the unfortunate thing about that sort of stuff is that people feel guilty because they feel that they could somehow have prevented it, but some things you can't prevent. And when you see a vision of something like that, it's just to prepare you. They're just trying to prepare you. It's not anything that, you were supposed to keep them from getting killed. I mean, that's not true at all. These are things that are, just written that, this is what happens in the world. It's, gravity gets us all the time, doesn't it? Living on the planet. It's part of being human. So, yeah. And that's probably the worst part about it is that seeing that, and then it happens afterwards. Now, if you're somebody like me, if like you work as a medium, and this is where I feel like I'm throwing myself off a cliff, the stuff that I do have knowings about, that's really bad. And then I can help people prevent it. Like I have a responsibility to tell them. And if I don't, and it happens, then I feel very guilty. But you see, that's because I have command of my gift, right? I know how it works. I know how this works. I know pretty much like if I'm seeing something, pretty good odds are that I'm seeing it because I can help them prevent that from happening. Yeah. So if you're not working like I do and you get that vision, it's just to prepare you.
Okay. All right. Charlie 2012 writes, greetings. I am a nurse and required to give Hep B vaccines to all newborns an hour old per parental permission. At least 90% trust the CDC and doctors and haven't done research to show them otherwise. You see people start to come around and find the harmful consequences of this and other vaccines, especially the extreme amount that's ordered.
God, Hep B. Jeez, I didn't have that until I was like a grown adult, and it was because I was going down south and didn't want to like eat a salad and get hepatitis B and ruin my liver. I was just making a choice. But wow, I feel really uncomfortable hearing that like little babies are getting a Hep B shot.
It's amazing what they want to do as soon as they come out. And it's like, if you haven't really thought about it before and have a plan with your doctor, they'll tend to push all this stuff on you. So it's really, you think about that when you're pregnant and you're in a daze and, you're not thinking. So you really have to, these days, I think, do your research beforehand, and it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it is for sure. No, I had no idea about that. And do I think that people are going to stop being sheep one day? Absolutely. And this is what we're in right now. It's called the Great Awakening for a reason. People are going to wake up and they're going to start taking more control into their hands and not be just so accepting at just what somebody says. They got to stop treating these government people like their word is God or something.
Yeah. And I think we kind of covered this. Hello. And Charlie also writes, do you see Gates and the CDC been able to push his vaccination agenda through?
No, no, that's not going to be no mandatory vaccinations. People can choose to get it or not if someone's high risk, for example, or, like my husband, where he works at the hospital, he has to have his flu vaccine. I mean, it's just part of the agreement where he was hired.
Yeah.
But,
Okay. We're going to skip our next question from Alicia. That's really an Ask a Medium question, Alicia. So if you want to just, copy and paste this into the one for next week, Sam can probably give you a little bit more insight as to your.
Yeah, because I originally did have Ask a Medium on this, and I think there were 3 questions posted. So
Okay. Or we can do it if you want.
I apologize to people. No, it's okay. We'll save it for next week because everybody here is, they want to hear the answer to woo-woo questions as much as possible. So we'll continue with that.
Okay. Big Cat, kind of specific, but we'll talk about significance of dreams. Hi, Sam and Rudy. 2 friends and myself have had dreams recently that my wife is pregnant and we have another child. Do these dreams have any significance?
Yeah.
Let's see. Iris writes, hello, Sam and Rudy. I'm wondering if you could talk about North America, specifically the land we now call Canada, in regards to the oral history of Indigenous ancestors who have century-old stories about the first peoples and having inhabited Turtle Island from the beginning of time. Could you confirm or add to the oral story of the Indigenous peoples about their existence on North America from the beginning of time?
Well, they were created equally with the other humans, and we were all created from the same place. So they migrated onto Canada and to South America, and so we're all from the same place. Down where Mesopotamia is, which is current day, I think Iraq, part of Iran. Where Mesopotamia is, right?
Yeah, in the fertile Iran, Iraq, that area, right?
Yeah, that's sort of the cradle of human civilization, and that's where we all came. So, I believe that the Indigenous peoples of whatever land it is, like in Australia, for example, they have Indigenous people, and I feel the Indigenous people are, equal with the criminals and individuals who migrated, because they released all the criminals from England and they dropped them off in Australia and told them to make a go of it, and then other people just migrated to Australia just because it was a place that they could start fresh and get a free piece of land. And and I mean, Australia is a beautiful country, and with some beautiful climates, and it has a lot going for it. So
yeah,
anyway,
that's something.
They're all equal because they've all migrated at one point or another. And I think if we all start looking at each other as just equal, you came out of your mother just like we all did. You had a father who helped make you. So we all had a mom and a dad, and we all have fears and we have ideas about things, and we have so much in common. So that's the message that I wanted to deliver on that. But they would have been like the original people who migrated. The Indigenous peoples are like in South America, like the Inca, that they died out. But I mean, they migrated the same. But what happened is the Indigenous people in North America, they're as old as the Incas in South America, but they just didn't die out. The Incas died out. I think they ran out of water or something.
Okay. So it wasn't necessarily separate groups of people being created around the same time. It was one big group migrated early on, and then they all kind of just evolved naturally.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. The next one comes from Crypto Cupcake. Hi, Sam and Rudy. I'm hoping to grow in my spiritual journey and intuition. Do you sense any helpful recommendations for me in terms of book, teachers, videos, or any practices material to explore that may help me bring me to my highest alignment to help others? Thank you. Sending much love and appreciation.
I really would like to have a conversation with a friend of mine who is a shaman, and I've known him for over 20 years. And I laugh because I hid that I was a medium from him.
Okay.
And, but it was funny because when I had a conversation with him on the phone, like 2 times since I retired, I totally read his mail. So he knows that he knows I'm just not somebody who's really crazy. Oh yeah, she went crazy. She thinks she's a medium now. He knows for sure that I am, but we're talking about getting together when he comes to the city for some work here because he lives in another city. And we were talking about like sitting outside and watching people walk by and kind of reading them,
Mhm.
right? But see, he's just very interested in it, and he did a lot of training. And I remember he used to go to a lot of these places where you would learn meditation and about your diet, and really put a lot of effort and work into it. And it seems to me that it's really helped him a lot because, when I was talking to him on the phone, I could tell that, that he was more enlightened than when I met him before,
Interesting. Okay.
so it does help. And what I wanted to do was get from him like what it was that he was doing, because with me, it's all very natural. You know, I'm the one everybody hates, the guy who goes out there and plays football the first time and he's throwing and catching like, you're just like, yeah, he's definitely going to the NFL because he's only, 14 years old and he's playing better than the guys who have been playing since they were 6. And it's just some people are naturally oriented. So I'm very respectful of the fact that my gift is naturally bestowed upon me. So I feel that I have a huge responsibility to make sure that I use it properly. This is huge for me, right? Because it was just given to me. Because so many people ask me, like, what do I have to do? And it's like, I know that you can do stuff because I've talked to people who have. And a really big part of it is, doing those readings and teachings and getting into the meditation, and even making your vacations more about, going to, a shaman's workshop or to a Buddhist temple, and having prayers there and things like that, and also looking at you know changing your diet so that you're not weighed down like a wet bag of cement, right? Sugar does that. Too much carbs do that. Lack of exercise. Even if you just get out and do a brisk walk every day for like 20 or 30 minutes, you're lifting your vibrations by doing that kind of stuff. So that's what kind of advice I would give to anybody who's really, searching and seeking that, because I know that you can improve where you're at. I know that for sure.
Yeah. And Sam, you mentioned before too, even that you looked at that school, I think, in England, and you realized it wasn't for you, or they told you not to go. But it's really look at things and figure out what works for you, because there's no one answer, right? You got to figure out what you are, what your gifts is, and what resonates with you, probably to develop to the most that you can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some people that in order to, you know, do anything, they need to like go to that school for the 6 months or a year, or, you know, change these things. And then there's other people like me who just had this assignment given, because this was decided before I got here. And I'm not here for me. That I wasn't born here for me. I wasn't here to go through the cycle of life and learn lessons like everyone else. I was part of the volunteers. So
Okay.
that's what makes me different in the sense where I'm a volunteer here for the Great Awakening. Whereas most people are struggling to get through their life every day. And, they have a lot of confusion. They don't know the answers. They want to know the answers, and they're willing to work for those answers. So, I'm here to help with that for sure.
Hey, Sam, I've heard that some mediums have an easier time reading for others than they do for themselves. Do you find this to be the case? How do you find that the two situations differ? Thanks, mucho. Cryptopotamus.
I have had mediums tell me that they have not been able to really have any ability at all to know anything for themselves. And even Dykeshorn, when I was reading about him, and he was the one who had clairvoyant on his passport. He was a Dutch man who died, I believe, in the 1990s in New York City in an apartment fire. Yeah, you have that. My passport says clairvoyant. Yeah, he couldn't see that coming. But when you're here for the Great Awakening, like I am, and where I'm like the medium, I have to know. I have to have some sort of idea. Now, Ironclad, I don't know as much as what I would, for example, know about you, Rudy.
Okay.
I would know much more about you and Teresa and your life, and because it is easier. My gift isn't for me; it's for you guys.
Yeah.
But in order for me to operate safely and have longevity, you know, make the right choices, I do have to have some abilities to know about what's coming for me and what decisions I have to make. And sometimes I don't, it's on a need to know basis as well.
I've heard stories where you make a deal with someone living so that when they pass over to send you a certain signal. Can this be done with cryptos? Work with a living person on specific crypto questions. Tell them that you'll be having a reading with Samantha Jane and to be ready. When they do pass over, you'll have an ally on the other side with the answers to your crypto questions.
Yes, you can do that.
So if you know someone's ready to make their departure, Bradley, and they're in a good mindset and they're willing to do it, that would be an interesting experiment. Yeah.
Yeah, I've already had it happen. I mean, they didn't make that deal, but this lady was sitting next to her dad on the laptop. And of course, talking out loud to her dad, who was in a coma before he died for like 10 months or 6 months, some crazy amount of time. And so, because I asked her, I was like, how did your dad know so much about cryptocurrencies? And then she told me that story. Because I'm like, didn't you say he was old? How does he know so much? And because he was telling her not to buy, it was Theta, because she was going to buy Theta because of the T fuel and stuff. And then she ended up buying, I think it was either Tezos or Bitcoin Cash.
Okay.
But she did very well with her choice because she said that her dad, she goes, Dad always knew best.
All right. Jillian Ash writes, Hi, Sam and Rudy. Just wondering if you meditate or do anything to prepare yourself before readings, etc. Thank you.
You know what? Before readings, that's usually when I would call them attacks heighten. So I just become more determined and I make sure that I'm thinking, positive thoughts.
Yeah.
That's probably the most important thing. As far as meditation goes, I don't meditate. When I don't on like now, when I have, it's like I'm too sensitive. It's like it almost feels like I'm going to lift off, and it just freaks me out. I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that because I'm already working as a medium, right? So it's like I'm already running a marathon, so I don't really want to come here and row the boat, right? Yeah. That's the best way for me to explain it. If you're running a marathon every day or you're doing a 10K run, you probably shouldn't come home and get on the exercise bike because now you might have a problem.
Yeah. Well, do you ever even do little things like before you sit down, just kind of take some deep breaths and just focus? Yeah. And even like the three deep breaths is a big thing just to calm you down and focus you, right? That helps a lot for me.
I usually ask out loud or, loudly in my mind to the people on the other side. I always ask them to make, I always say, make sure that you prepare them, that you tell me that what I need to know to tell them, like what's important, prepare them for the answer so that they'll know, like when I was telling somebody about something, like a lot of times I'll be like, oh, I really feel like you need to buy some bat. They're like, yeah, I don't have enough bat. I was thinking that. I was wondering if I should get bat, right? And there's probably about 15 or 20 different cryptocurrencies that people like to consistently talk to me about. So the statistical odds are pretty much like 1 in 15 that, they would be obsessing about that one. So, I ask that kind of stuff be given to me, but that the other person will know immediately when they hear it that I'm really just confirming what they already knew. That's the main thing I ask for. Because then people have comfort in that. They're just not going on, Samantha Jane's word that this is going to happen. They're just like, you know what, that feels right. And I was asking about that. And, I didn't even bring it up with her. She brought it up. So it must be the people on the other side.
Yeah. Okay. Human Avatar writes, Hello, Sam and Rudy. How much of your thoughts and beliefs filter what you consider as valid information from the other side?
How much? Oh, you can definitely be influenced by your own thoughts and feelings. And and you see that with some of the prophetic writings in the Bible, as well as the other, there's other works in Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism that I think are futuristic as well. So I do think that a lot of prophetic work was happening, but you can see how people would have their own ideas about things really influencing. So I certainly do my best to keep an open mind. I'm a pretty mature person who has traveled a lot in her lifetime, and I've worked with so many different people just because of the business that I was in, whether they were clients or people who worked for me. So I think that is something that I've been very well trained for. But I'm not going to say that there isn't some time that my own personal belief system doesn't influence my understanding or how I decipher something. And even more than that, I find that just my human mind, like, how I say, oh, I'm going to be in this for 4 years. They told me 4 years. But then when you think about it, you're like, well, which 4 years? 4 years from the first minute I bought cryptos, or from the time that I started my channel? Because my channel was the thing that they were talking about, that I was going to be doing this, and that my cryptos were going to be in for this period. So it makes you think about the different angles that you could be coming from. You're like, oh, well, I immediately, you assume, and that's a human thing. And that, I would say, that happens even more so than just my thoughts and beliefs interfering. I'm more apt to screw up just because I just didn't do the math right. I was like, I didn't think of that angle.
Jackie B writes, from time to time, I've heard information from a person calling himself the medical medium, Anthony William, mostly healing through food and nutrition. Do you think his information is from the other side or research? Thanks.
I think a little bit of both. All right. Thanks, everybody, again, for hanging out. And thanks again, Rudy, for keeping control of things and those awesome topics you put together. Bye for now.